Hello, this is Evan Rogerson, also known as Nine Motor Gang, and today I will be breaking down the VEX V5 Robotics Competition High Stakes Game Manual. This is kind of designed to go through and cover all of the concepts of the game manual, both for new teams and teams who already have VRC experience. It's not designed to be a complete replacement for the game manual. I highly recommend each person read it themselves, but I also know that a lot of teams just won't read the game manual, so if you're one of those teams, this should at least be a supplement that should cover all of the main critical points. Also, keep in mind, I am recording this, like, the game manual is not even been out for 7 hours at the time of this recording, and it's also like 1 a.m. in the morning, and I have been staying up late, not getting much sleep, because Worlds was, like, right before this. So I might get something wrong, or things might change in the future, so this isn't all going to be 100% accurate. I will probably have a pinned comment at the top of this that kind of goes over some of the changes that have been made. Additionally, if you guys want to see me cover things like the skills manual and the VEXU manual or updates in the future, please let me know in the comments. That way I know if this is something that you guys like. Alright, so jumping in, we have cover page, table of contents. This is all kind of useless information, nothing really important here. Yeah, change logs, nothing important. This is kind of hotkeys in case you want to go through later and find a specific role. This is just kind of like the purpose behind the competition. It's like to teach you STEM. Primer, if you've seen the reveal video, this is essentially the welcome to the greatest 2 minutes in robotics. That sort of thing. Note from the GDC essentially just states that the game manual only tells you things that you cannot do, the constraints. However, it does not cover the criteria that you must accomplish. So game manual tells you what you can't do. If the game manual tells you that you can't do something, chances are it's legal, assuming you follow G3, which is use common sense. So the game manual also receives updates, as I kind of mentioned before. So I'm recording using the April 30th version because it is May 1st right now. And this will probably be updated and changed, and I'll probably try and have videos that cover these updates later on. Game manual updates are supposed to update by 5 p.m. on Tuesday Central Time, but they have been late in the past. There's also a Q&A system in case you have specific questions that cannot be answered by the manual, and that opens a little bit later in the season. So, overview of the game. This is pretty basic. You have your 5 mobile goals, you have your 4 corners, and you have your alliance stations. And this diagram kind of shows you the setup for the field, specifically the order that the rings are stacked on top of each other, which is a little bit easier if you just see the isometric view, or you can open up the CAD models. These are just kind of your definitions. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. Some of them, if you're not familiar with VRC, might be a little bit confusing, like the difference between disablement and disqualification. Disablement means your robot's usually entangled with something, and it's a safety hazard, so you're forced to shut down your robot for the rest of the match, whereas disqualification happens after the match. It means you violated a rule, and you will not receive any points for that match. So there are differences. You can receive disablement without disqualification, and disqualification without disablement. You can also receive both at the same time. These are just kind of your definitions. These are all what's referenced later on by the other rules. Autonomous period. For VEXU, it changed from a 45-second autonomous period to a 30-second autonomous period. High school is still the same, though. This stuff all hasn't changed. You have your minor violations, which are just kind of like, don't do that again, but it didn't really change anything. And then your major violations are, this was like a big deal. It had a strong likelihood of affecting the outcome of the match, so that's going to be a disqualification. And major violations are almost always caused by match-affecting violations, but there are a couple exceptions, which we'll get to later. So you have the autonomous line, which let me kind of pull up 2 monitors right here. So your autonomous line is that double tape line going down the middle. There is no neutral zone this year, so if I am the red robot, I am allowed to drive up into this line, the far line, and I am allowed to touch that line, but I'm not allowed to go past it. And it's a 2-dimensional space, not a 3-dimensional space. The same goes for blue, and that they go to that line, for the one right there. Again, they can touch it, can't go over it. It's a 2-dimensional space. And then I guess there is like a mini neutral zone. That's always been a part of VEX, at least as long as I've been competing. So then you also have the corners. Now the corners are in each zone. They have little tape marks to kind of show if they're a plus corner or a minus corner. And these corners kind of act as multipliers, and they are included as the tape lines. So as long as your goal is touching the tape line, they count as multiplied. And this is a 2-dimensional space, not a 3-dimensional space, which means that you actually have to be touching the tile. You cannot just be hovering over it. And then definitions for things like ladder, mobile goal, and this kind of has some of the specs. But if you need very specific information, I would recommend checking out the CAD files, which I believe are on the VEX website. So possession, this is pretty similar to the possession definitions in the past. If you turn, the robot goes with you. A couple things that are different this year is robot is holding the scoring object against the floor or a field element. So like if you're pinning a mobile goal against the wall and like you're applying pressure to it to stop it from moving, that would count as possessed as far as I'm aware. And then plowing is essentially like if you think tri-balls and over-under, you're just like pushing a lot of objects at the same time. So this is you're just kind of pushing it. I think this is a spelling error. A robot is considered to be plowing a scoring object if the robot is intentionally moving in a preferred direction with a flatter convex surface of the robot. I think that's supposed to mean a scoring object is intentionally moving in a preferred direction. I'm not entirely sure on that though. Ring, obviously. Then the stakes. So there are 10 stakes in the match. You have neutral stakes, which are on the goals. You have neutral stakes, which are on the walls. You have each alliance gets their own stake, and then you have the high stake. And stakes are only allowed to fit a specific number of rings on those goals. The starting line this is how you kind of start the match, which I'll get to a little bit later with SG1. But the starting line is that line right there. Where's the top-down view? Yeah, it's that line right there. And then that is also a starting line over there. Yeah. So this is a little bit different. All scoring statuses are evaluated after the match ends. This has changed because now there's a 5-second delay. So anything that happens after 5 seconds will no longer count. So like if your robot's hanging there and it falls after like 7 seconds, it's fine. They still are supposed to count it as scored. Which I'm not exactly sure how that will logistically work if they're not sure what height tier it's at. And there will be like tournament manager is supposed to display like a screen that will kind of stay at 0-0 for those 5 seconds, and you're not allowed to like specifically design mechanisms to trigger after the match ends, because I know that originally I was thinking like you could design a hang to go after the match ends, but that's not allowed. You need to be in the process of like already scored before this ends, and you do not get the benefit of the doubt for the higher points. So like if you're climbed and you drop like right at 5 seconds, they go with the benefit of lowest points, so you don't get the points. I think that covers everything there. Autonomous period does similar thing, but there doesn't seem to be the 5-second thing again. And again, it's the same. It's a 6-point bonus, by the way, this year, and then 3 points if you get a tie if both alliances violate rules. Any rule violation, minor violations included during the autonomous period, will result in you not getting the bonus. And if both teams get disqualified from autonomous, then nobody gets the bonus, which does not affect the outcome of the match because it's obviously a net swing, but it can affect things like autonomous rankings and strength points. So rings are scored. They have to be like encircling it. This is pretty obvious. And then they also can't be above. So like you can fit a 7th ring on, but as listed earlier in the manual, which I believe is, yeah, right there. Each ring has a specific number of, each pole has a specific number of rings that it can hold. So you can't stack extra ones on it. And then if the ring is touching the tile, then it is not scored. I believe if it's touching the perimeter, let me double check that. Yeah, you cannot be touching the ring for it to be scored. It's like rings and tipping point, or like tri-balls and over-under. Has to be encircled by the stake. That's pretty much it. It's mostly just use common sense here. Like, is it on or is it off? It should be pretty obvious. But they can count as tipped over. And there's no like transitive contact. I know that's been a thing in years past where like if one ring is scored, then it can't be touching a ring that's not scored. So you don't have to worry about like touching one ring and your entire stack becomes descored. In order to be the top ring, you have to be furthest from the base, which is fairly obvious. So it's not height based. Like if you were like angled down, it would be the ring furthest from the goal, not the one that's actually higher up. You only need one ring. You don't need to have more than one. Yeah, and the ring obviously has to be scored. And it's not worth 4 points because 3 plus 1, the ring is now worth 3 points instead of 1 point if it's a top ring. So mobile goals are placed in the corner. If they're touching the corner, which includes the tape line, they have to be upright, so it cannot be contacting like the floor or the field perimeter with like the stake. And it doesn't matter if your robot's touching it or not. And then there's some tiebreaker criteria. It's essentially which one is more in the corner counts as in the corner if there are multiple goals, which I don't think is going to happen much because of the spacing, it's really hard to fit in, and there should be pretty obvious which one is more in the corner. Yeah, and then in the corner, essentially if you get them in the corner in your plus zone, it doubles them. If you get them in a negation zone, it's not just minus those points, it like subtracts the rings from the other team. So if the other team doesn't have any rings scored, putting it in the negation zone doesn't take away points from them. You can't take away like autonomous points or hang points. You can only take away ring points using negation. And this will probably change. They specifically mention this, that it's subject to change, and they don't do that for any other rule. So this is probably the most likely one that they'll change throughout the season. And there are just a couple examples there that you can look at if you're curious. So yeah, robot climbing a level, you have to get like above the PVC pipe bar of that stage. Pretty basic, like hang tiers and over under. You cannot be touching goals, so you can't climb with a goal and be considered elevated. You cannot be touching the tiles, obviously, or other elements, so you can't like prop yourself up on a goal or a ring. You have to be touching the ladder here, and then yeah, it's using the minimum point in your robot, not the highest point. Autonomous win point this year is you have to score 3 rings, and those rings have to be spread out across 2 different goals. And then you cannot be touching your starting line, which if I go back up to this picture, yeah. So you cannot be touching your starting line, so you have to move off the line, and then at least one robot has to touch the ladder. So your teammate needs to at least move in order for you to get the win point, although you could, I guess, shove them out of the way if you wanted to. Nothing against that. Also, interestingly enough, the autonomous win point, the GDC specifically notes that they will probably change it for signature events and event region championships. Essentially, worlds qualifying events are going to have a stricter autonomous win point. This is probably because, like, I believe one of the divisions in over-under high school had like a 95% autonomous win point success rate. So they're probably trying to, at these higher level of competitions, more differentiate who's actually the top teams. Safety rules, like safety first. You got to have an adult there. You can't just go as a student. Don't leave the field and wear safety glasses. Those haven't changed. G1, yeah, be respectful. G2, don't be mentor built. G3, use common sense when interpreting the rules. G4, robots must represent the skill level of the team, which like don't have people building your robots for you. This kind of goes hand in hand with G2. G5, it's 18, 18, 18 starting volume, same as it's been for forever. No detention elements. You can't clamp robots to the field, except for the ladder. You can clamp onto the ladder during the end game, and you are allowed to clamp onto game elements, because game elements are different than field elements. You get 3 team members in your drive team, which goes in your alliance station. And yeah, you can't use things in order to simplify game tasks, but match loading is like a tiny thing this year, so that's not really an issue. But like no stools or anything if you're short, then the GDC just hates you. Hands out of the field, so like you can't obviously just stick your hands in. Controllers have to stay connected. You can't do things with your humans during autonomous. All rules still apply to autonomous. Don't destroy other robots. Offensive robots get the benefit of the doubt. Can't force your opponent into a penalty. No holding for more than 5 seconds. Use scoring objects to play the game, also known as the gloves rule. These have stayed pretty similar throughout the years. Didn't notice any major changes going through those. Specific game rules. Starting a match, you have to like start above your tape line, the starting zone, which is, I don't think they've done anything like this before. You can't contact any scoring objects other than your preloads, like you can't touch starting that ring right there. You can't be touching another robot, and you have to be completely stationary, which I don't know why they decided to add this. I don't know who has their robot moving before the match starts, but for some reason they decided to add that. Okay, SG2. This rule is something special. It's easily the most convoluted rule that they've come up with in a long time. So horizontal expansion is not easy. So your overall footprint can never exceed 24 inch by 18 inches. And this is weird. So you can expand 6 inches in one direction. And like this direction has to be noted during inspection. It's off of a face of your robot, which isn't clearly defined. I don't know if this is just like anything that's flat on your robot, or if it has to be like completely related to the drive base. Yeah, it says usually just like use common sense. Vast majority of VHRC robots are relatively square rectangular, and clearly have intuitive fronts and sides. So I don't know how much this rule can be bent. G3 does apply. And the 6 inches have to go in the same direction. So 6 inches to the right, fine. 6 inches to the right, fine. You can't go 3 and 3. That's not allowed. And this is where things get weird. Like if your robot isn't 18 inches wide, you can still expand 16 inches out. But you cannot expand out to 18 inches if your robot isn't 18 inches wide, which is really weird. So you could literally just like add zip ties going out, and then you're allowed to expand out horizontally. But as of now, you can't expand out to 18 inches if your robot doesn't start at 18 inches. And then it's off of a face. So this one is legal because that extends off of that face right there, going out 6 inches. That one does the same. But this isn't legal because you'd have to go like out that way. So that doesn't work. So maybe you could like add a C channel. If you really wanted to extend that way, maybe you could like add a C channel sticking out. I don't know how strict they'll be on faces. I expect that to be clarified a lot in the Q&A because I'm sure there are going to be tons of questions about this. Again, there's a face, so it extends out, but that is not a face. That's just a point, so you can't extend out. I don't know. I guess you could maybe like make that flat if you wanted to expand out that way. Again, I'm sure this will be clarified in the Q&As later on. But generally, you pick one direction, you note that direction during inspection, you extend out 6 inches that way, and you can only extend out in that direction. It has to be off of a face, or at least in the direction of a face. Vertical expansion is also a little silly goofy. You essentially have to monkey bar your way up the ladder. You cannot just go all the way to the top. So if you're touching the floor, like it's based off the lines here. So you can picture that line as like the tile line, and that's the line threshold between like bottom hang and middle hang, and then that's the threshold between high hang and like middle hang, and then that's like threshold between, I guess, the very tallest hang and just regular high hang. So you can only be across 2 of these lines at once. So you can be in like 3 zones kind of. This would be considered like lowest hang, and that's fine because you're reaching up. You'd be touching this bar and touching that bar. So you can really only be tall enough to touch 2 bars at once. And for that purpose, like the tiles touch the bar. So you can touch the tiles and that bar, and you have to lift yourself off the tiles before you can reach up to that gray bar. Then you have to let go of the black bar before you can touch the yellow bar. And then you can expand up all you want. So like, it doesn't rotate with your robot at all either. So yeah, you can't skip levels. So yeah, you cannot contact the ladder. You can't touch black, gray, yellow at the same time. That's not possible. Yeah, and if you fall at the end of the match and things bad happen, it's probably not going to be an issue. Keep scoring objects in the field. This is always kind of a thing. But there are a couple changes here, including a GDC favorite of an instant DQ. Also, silly goofy. So if rings leave the field, if they know which robot's fault it is, that robots get the violation. But if the refs don't know whose fault it is that the ring left the field, all the robots get punished. So I guess if a robot likes to throw rings out of the field, stay away from them because you might get a rule violation. Yeah, and if a ring leaves the field, you get the ring back to use as a match load because we all love match loads and we didn't get enough of them this year. So if a red ring leaves the field, regardless of which robot threw it out, red gets it as a match load. Match loads have to be placed tower takeover style, so they have to be touching the field perimeter, contacting the floor, can't be touching a goal, can't be touching a robot, can't be touching a corner. So really pretty limited in how you place them. And then if a mobile goal leaves the field, that's an instant DQ. Because any team who removes a mobile goal from the field will immediately receive a major violation. So if you throw a goal out of the field, instant DQ. So you don't want to be holding goals over the field or anything because then you can get instant DQ'd, even if you drop them and stuff on accident. Yeah, most rule violations will be minor except for those ones. Yeah. And then, yeah, if you do more than 3 violations of this rule, you get a major violation, you get DQ'd. I guess which means you could be doing everything completely legal and just a robot throws a ring out next to you 3 times and then you get DQ'd. So, fun times, fun times. You get a preload. It has to start touching a robot. Can't be touching another preload. You can start it in a scored position if you want. There's nothing against that. If the robot's not there, you place it as a match load before the match starts. Possession is a little bit wonky this year. So you can possess 2 rings and you can only possess 1 goal. And the possession rule I kind of explained earlier in the video. If you're in possession of more than what's legal, you have to remove these objects before you do anything else. If you can't, you have to go back to your starting position and sit there for the rest of the match. Rings on stakes are not included for possession. Even if it's technically not scored, as long as it's on the stake, it's fine. So you can still be touching it and it doesn't count. And then this one is weird. You are allowed to plow or push multiple mobile goals. However, you cannot push a mobile goal if you're carrying a mobile goal because you might get a rule violation. And the GDC doesn't want you to accidentally get a rule violation, so they're just going to say you can't even try and accidentally get a violation. So yeah, you can push 2 goals at once, you can push 5 goals at once, but if you're possessing a goal, you can't push any goals. Definitely weird. Yeah, so violation notes. So egregious ones could be like possessing multiple goals in a single corner, continuing to do stuff once you have more than the legal amount, just an egregious amount of rings. So like, I don't know, don't pick up like 20 rings on the field at once. And then yeah, doing stuff with a bunch of rings. Or like removing excess scoring objects. So like you can't just like remove a bunch of rings all at once. Don't cross the autonomous line. This rule has changed slightly. So if you cross the line, the other team gets auto automatically and you can't get it. Yeah, but then engage with the autonomous line at your own risk. So if both teams are going for like the mobile goal that starts on the neutral zone, if you both go for it and like the robots are go for the same object, the GDC doesn't care if you cross the line after that. So like if you both clamp onto the goal and one of them pulls you back over to the other side, it's not a violation. And you can't do this intentionally to exploit it. Like you can't go tap the goal and then do like a suicide auto. And yeah, don't damage other robots, and offensive robots get the benefit of the doubt. And yeah, don't do this repeatedly. So you don't use this for strategic gain, but like if you get screwed up or messed up going for a neutral zone object, it's not the end of the world. SG9, this is another silly, goofy rule. So don't remove opponents from the ladder. When the robots are climbing up the ladder, you're not allowed to like mess with them at all. So yeah, they're climbing up. You can't bump them and stuff. You can't try and pull them off the ladder. But there's no like specific rules. Like if you bump them, that's fine. Yeah, the big thing is you can't intentionally try and get them off. Yeah, and then here's kind of like some guidance from the GDC, I guess. So higher robots are considered more offensive. They get the right of way. So high robots are going to be more favored. So if two robots are going up the pole and the one beneath the robot falls, the higher robot's not going to get in trouble, but if the higher robot falls, the lower robot might get in trouble. You get more, like it's safer, I guess, to hang facing your own goal. So like if you're the Red Alliance standing over there, and you hang on that rung or that rung, you're considered safer than if you're hanging on that rung or that rung. So I guess if you're trying to hang on your side of the field, because you're considered more offensive. Yeah. Don't like have a really weak climbing mechanism. So like you can't be like if you get tapped, you just fall. You have to have a good solid grip. You should expect possible interactions if you're going for the high stake, like over there, because that's kind of a contested thing. Think yellow platform and turning point. And yeah, if you go for it, it's kind of like do it so at your own risk. So yeah, low risk is if you have strong, you're staying on your side of the ladder, you avoid the high stake. And yeah, but then high risk would be like you're climbing up at the last second, going for the high stake. Yeah, but then, silly, GDC being silly, but you're not allowed to be surprised when an accident is not ruled in your favor. So essentially, if you're doing high-risk things and someone else's robot falls off, they're probably going to DQ you. Or maybe this just means if you get surprised at any point in the competition, you get instantly DQ'd. And that's a joke in case you can't tell. And then alliance wall stakes are protected. Those are the stakes over there. Red can score on that one. Blue can't descore those. Blue can score on those ones. Red can't descore those. That's a nice, simple rule. Nice and short. Now, moving on to Section 3 of the robot, this has all stayed pretty much the same. You can only have one robot at the competition. You have to do the robot yourself. Robot has to pass inspection, 18, 18, 18. The horizontal expansion rule, which I've covered before, robot has to be safe. Robot has to be built from Vex products. There are a couple exceptions like rubber bands, zip ties. You can decorate your robots. Those don't count. You've got to have your license plates visible. You have to be designed to let go of scoring objects, which the ladder is not a scoring object. That is only rings and goals, without powering on your robot afterwards, or like unscrewing things. You can only use one brain. Motor limiting is the same as before, has to add up to 88 watts. Only can power from the battery. Can't use additional electronic or pneumatic components and modify them. You can modify non-electrical parts like cutting them, that sort of thing. Got to use VexNet control system. Got to have your radio. Custom plastic rolls have remained the same. You get your 12 by 24 inch sheet, up to 0.07 inches thick. You can use tape to like secure wires and stuff. And you can use commercially available screws and nuts. New Vex parts are legal. The pneumatic drills are the same. You get 2 tanks, unlimited solenoids, unlimited cylinders. There's the link to all the legal parts. You can have 1 or 2 controllers. You are allowed to crimp your own smart cables. You have to be able to reach your power button. You have to use the competition template for programming. And you can't, like, it's okay if you accidentally break a robot rule, like, oh no, my robot's 18.01 inches. They're not going to, like, get mad at you for that. But if it's, like, you're downloading illegal firmware to try and give yourself extra power on the motors, that's a big issue, and you can get G1 for that. The tournament has remained mostly the same. You have your match schedule. You score win points in matches to rank. 2 win points for winning, 1 for tying, 1 for getting the autonomous win point, 0 for losing. Autonomous points, you get 6 for winning autonomous, 3 for tying autonomous. And the next thing is strength points, which is the score of the losing alliance during the match. It doesn't have to do with difference. Yeah. Then head referee makes all the final decisions. Head referee's qualifications. Drive team can appeal the head referee's ruling. The event partner can have authority over things like repairing fields if things break or things in the pits. You have to show up to your matches. This one, T6, comes up with like charge your pneumatics before you put the robot on the field. Be on time to your matches. Match replays are allowed if like the field breaks and stuff, or like there's an issue with scoring and like field resets and then they realize there was a mistake or something. White screens are no longer an error in case you missed that. White screens is now considered a skill issue. You get disqualified for a major violation, in which case you get no points. Not even strength points. No autonomous win points. Nothing. Yeah. If you get disqualified in elims, your alliance is out. If you get disqualified in skills, which maybe I'll cover in a later video, you don't get any points. You get 1 timeout, which is... Yeah, it doesn't say how long. It's up to the event partner's discretion. But you get a timeout in elims. Usually it's 3 or 5 minutes. Things can be off by 1 inch in either direction. Also, this is interesting, the rotation of the mobile goals is not specified. So your goals can start rotated, which only matters up to like 30 degrees, and then it just starts to repeat. Yeah, fields can be repaired by event partner's discretion if something breaks. Red alliance places last, which may be useful, as I know some teams are talking about goal rush because there's a neutral contested goal. So red can say blue has to place their robots first, so they can know if like blue's pointed at that goal with their autonomous and try and guess what they're doing, psych them out. Definitely, if you look back at strategy talks for Tipping Point, there's a lot there. You get 6 qualification matches. This can be waived if like things are running really behind, so don't freak out if something happens. A match schedule is randomly generated. Qualification matches are how you're ranked. Tiebreakers, so it goes win points, autonomous points, strength points, highest match score, second highest match score, random electronic draw. Alliance selection, you send 1 person up. If you... I did not mean to click that. Wait, where did it go? Oops. Sorry. Yeah, if you're in an alliance selection and somebody asks to pick you, you can decline them, but then nobody else can ask to pick you. You have to wait till you get picked. Yeah, that's that rule right there. Brackets, the same as always. You can run buys. That changed last year. Now this is different. At a non-Worlds qualifying event, if it is a multi-division event, then division finals are best of 3. I'm pretty sure that's new. There's your chart for a number of alliances at a tournament. Fields must be the same. All comp fields either have to be like metal, plastic, raised, non-raised, and then all skills fields have to be the same. Field control types, and then yeah, those are the 2 types of perimeters, and that kind of covers everything in the manual. If you have any questions, like let me know. I'll do my best to answer them. And then yeah, if you guys want to see me cover updates, skills, VexU, please let me know. Good luck in Tipping Point 2, because that's what this game is.